Reading with your kids.
Hola, ni hao, konnichiwa, assalamu alaikum, shalom, jambo, bienvenidos. Hi, my name is Jed Lee, and this is the Reading with Your Kids podcast. We are delighted that you're part of our beautiful Reading with Your Kids family. Thank you so very much. We don't want you to miss an episode. Please be sure to subscribe on the iHeartRadio app or wherever you find your podcast. We have a wonderful guest for you today. She is the driving force behind the Happy Science Mom blog. Her name is Sandi Schwartz. You know, I think you're going to absolutely love our conversation with Sandi Schwartz today. It's really a lot of fun. You know, one of the things that we've talked about here on the podcast a lot is that if you look around today, you might notice that many kids, they don't realize just how very capable they are. Many children haven't had practice solving their own problems, and therefore they think that they're just not able to solve their own problems. Kids need to know that they are capable of handling situations they encounter in everyday life, and capable of handling the emotions that come with those situations as well. Practice handling their problems is essential for achieving success in the real world. Problems such as missing shoes, having to turn the TV off, wanting a pet, or making a mistake. Kids learn best through repetition. And after reading I Can Handle It by Laurie Wright and hearing the mantra, I can handle it over and over again, they will identify with the child in the story and realize that they are just like him and declare that they can handle it. Check it out today. It's a great book, I Can Handle It by Laurie Wright. I really loved when Laurie Wright was on the show telling me about her Mindful Mantras series and reminding kids that they can handle it and reminding me that I can handle it. And I really need that right now because this next ad, I gotta believe that I can handle it. Okay, here we go. Reading with your kids is often about reading out loud with your kids. And what would make a better read out loud book than a book that has 6 cranky relatives, 3 mean dinosaurs, and 1 very cranky Tyrannosaurus. The book is called The Last Surviving Dinosaur, the Tyrannosaurus, written by Stephen Joseph and playfully illustrated by Andy Case. The book tells the tale of how the dinosaurs became extinct, and not in the life-ending meteor shower that paleontologists are always trying to pass off on us. The Tyrannosaurus is so cranky that she makes all the other bigger, meaner dinosaurs disappear. That is, until she comes across the only dinosaur who is immune to her incessant complaining, the Tyrannosaurus. These 2 dinosaurs evolved into humans, and that's where cranky people come from. Throughout the illustrated book, family members and dinosaurs humorously battle to have their best sources. Which is a Yiddish word that I don't pronounce very well. It means big, really big problems, including warts, alligator attacks, and brain tumors. Poor cousin Dottie grew an entire forest on her feet. Oi! And the best part of this very funny book is that it is not just for cranky kids. As the storyteller says in the end, even mommy and daddy can be crankosauruses and cavechosauruses sometimes. You know, you gotta admit, if you're enjoying listening to me batch and mangle this copy, then you know that your kids are gonna love hearing you read The Last Surviving Dinosaur, the Tyrannosaurus, written by Stephen Joseph, out loud to them. They're going to want to hear you mangle those words over and over and over again. It's going to be a lot of fun. It's going to bring a lot of joy to your family, and you're going to love it. Check it out today. It's The Last Surviving Dinosaur by Stephen Joseph. It's available on Amazon, Barnes & Noble, and many other sites where books are sold. Joining us on the line right now from West Palm Beach in the beautiful state of Florida. She is the driving force behind an amazing website. It's called happysciencemom.com. Please welcome to the show, Sandi Schwartz. Sandi, how are you?
Great. How are you doing today, Jed?
I'm really hoping that you can send some sunshine from Florida up here to Boston because it has been miserable. We've had one day. I think we've had more warm days in February than we've had in April. It's been crazy. It snowed here in Massachusetts yesterday.
Oh my! Yes, I have relatives. I'm originally from New Jersey, and I heard that. I'm happy to send some heat. You can take some of our heat because it is too hot down here.
That's the thing, it's fun. My producer lives in Mumbai in India, and, she, anytime I'm complaining about the cold, she always says, "Oh, I wish I was there," because it's like 130 here right now.
Well, I hear Boston has its swings. One day it's hot, one day it's cold, and you can't really keep straight, right?
Absolutely. Yeah, it is. It's, we have the expression, if you don't like the weather, wait a minute, it's going to change.
Yes.
And, and if I can try a really cheesy segue here, having crazy swings, sometimes we experience that with our kids, 1 minute they're happy, and then the next minute they're kind of off the wall. And one of the things that you want to talk about today is how we can use books and reading with our kids to help kids relax and kind of control their emotions and get better sleep.
Yes, and sleep in itself is a huge way to control anxiety and mood and to help get us balanced, keep balance. Every therapist I've ever spoken to in my life has the number one thing: are you getting enough sleep? That's the number one recommendation. And as you know, books have a lot to do with sleep, because when do parents typically sit and read with their children? Usually before bedtime. Mm-hmm. So yeah, there's a huge connection between reading, sleep, and stress reduction.
We certainly hear a lot more about stress and anxiety in kids than we heard about it when I was a kid. Of course, that was 100 years ago. So, are kids under more stress these days, or is it just something that we've become more aware of and in tune of?
Well, it does appear statistically that more children are unfortunately suffering. Mm-hmm. I have some stats here. According to the Anxiety and Depression Association of America, it is estimated that 1 in 8 children suffers from an anxiety disorder, and a lot more children are being medicated for these issues. So, and that's partly, I was struggling myself with some anxiety and realized that my parents never really taught me how to deal with stress, which if you don't know how to deal with stress, then it turns into anxiety. Mm-hmm. So when I decided to develop my blog, that was where I came at it from, is what's everything I wish my parents would have taught me? And so I enjoy the research of it, pulling together all the natural ways that we can reduce stress. Because again, when I started having some anxiety issues, the doctors were so quick to want me to take a pill. Mm-hmm. And again, the science out there says, well, there's a lot you can do before you get to that point. Mm-hmm. And so it's important for parents to realize to have a toolkit, which includes mindfulness, spending time in nature, good sleep habits, looking at how there's a whole concept of how art allows you to relax more. And part of that is in relation to reading. Mm-hmm. One of the reasons would be flow. When you're engaged if you enjoy writing or if you enjoy painting, you just get lost in that moment because of the flow. It allows you to just forget all your worries. Mm-hmm. And that's kind of what reading does as well. When you have a good book, you're lost in it.
Yeah, you really are. It was kind of scary at one point. I was listening to a book on tape, as I was driving home from performing, and I got a call from my wife and interrupted me, and she said, "Hey, where are you?" And I said, I really don't know. I'm on a highway. And so it's an interstate somewhere in the United States, but I'm not, I just kind of zoned out and was really lost inside that book. So I don't recommend that to anybody, but it is a wonderful way for our kids to kind of de-stress.
Yes. And back to your question about, is it a bigger issue today? Mm-hmm. A lot of the research shows because of all this technology and the 24/7 must-be connected culture, it's taking a toll on all of us. Mm-hmm. And the expectations, there's more people around. There's so many activities and expectations for these kids. There's just so much going on in their lives that they don't really have a lot of time to go inside, themselves. It's so much of this external stimulation. So, and all the news and it's overwhelming. So I think it goes with just, more people around, more technology, and being more knowledgeable. So now we do know when we were kids, our parents was probably just like, okay, they're just in a bad mood. They'll get over it. But kids, really do struggle sometimes, and it's important that we help them get through it. So.
Yeah, life as a kid really has changed. I was out walking with my wife the other night and Augie the Wonder Dog, and we were passing a playground, and it was empty. And, I was commenting, and it was one of the nice days that we have had in April. So I was commenting to I said, we just don't see kids in playgrounds anymore. And yesterday I was walking through another neighborhood, and I was amazed because that playground was filled with kids. But then I took a closer look, and it was a school, it was like a after-school group. So they were there in the playground, but they were there with adults. So it wasn't like it was when I was a kid. Exactly. Yeah. And you just don't have that time. My niece was asking me the other day, she goes, how, you don't skate that well, but you can shoot a puck. And how did you learn how to do that? Well, it was from going out and playing street hockey for hours and hours and hours with no adult supervision, no kind of structure. Is just go out. There's a puck, there's a stick. Here's a goal. Just go at it. And you just don't see that kind of stuff anymore.
No, and that's actually a lot of my writing is also about that. I'm actually working on a book proposal myself because I love books so much. My dream is to write my own, and it's all about how families can look towards nature for stress reduction, and that's everything from going on a hike as a family to free play at the playground to doing yoga outside to gardening. There's so much that is so basic that we can be doing. And again, coming back to books, that's also interesting because I still love the library. I love my old-fashioned paper books. And one of the recommendations that I've read is to not read the book online, especially before bed, right? We don't want to get in that habit with our kids. So we want to go kind of back to the olden days and read that paper book. It's just a more relaxing way of the reading and, taking in that the words and the visions that you're getting from the story. So it is interesting. Technology is good to a point, but we also have to sometimes get back to the basics.
Yeah. And one of the things as you're talking about, looking at the paper page and hearing the words and immersing ourselves in the story, I think probably the biggest reason, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, but I think one of the biggest reasons that reading with our kids can be so therapeutic in terms of helping them deal with anxiety and stress is that you're there with them. And it's just so comforting for a kid to have their parent with them, maybe snuggled up on a couch or sitting next to each other, maybe lying down in the bed together. Just that knowing that this person that I look up to, that I care about, that's the most important person in my life, that this person cares enough about me to stop what they're doing and to just be with me.
Yes, it definitely, according to sleeplady.com, who's an expert in children's sleep issues, she said that it really does create a comforting family bond for the parent and child to, like you said, snuggle up, have a lot of, the cozy stuffed animals around and the blankets, and have your library of books available to you, to have maybe dim the lights a little bit and really take advantage of that. It's kind of, it's like a mindfulness time, right? It allows you to unwind at the end of the day. There's been a recommendation too for that for the bedtime routine to only be about 30 minutes. You hear about parents who it takes 2 hours to put their kid to bed. And it's so helpful to have a structural bedtime routine that would include, you put the pajamas on, you brush the teeth, and then get together and snuggle and read that very nice, calm, relaxing book together. And yeah, it's special. And sure, your kids can read and have book knowledge. Hand them an iPad, they can read whatever as far as they can go. But that isn't that personal connection that you're talking about, which is so critical.
Mm-hmm. Talk a little bit about, please, expand on that idea of the bedtime routine, and as you're talking about it, and like, yes, having that last activity be the snuggling, the reading the book together. It seems like so logical that is such a better way to prepare a kid to sleep than, the parent in the living room trying to watch TV and screaming at the kids, "Get to bed, I told you, get to bed." That's the fourth time I've told you to get to bed, get to bed.
Yes. And of course, children at a young age, it's important to start at a very young age. Even when they're just a baby and you're rocking them to sleep or you're putting them in their crib, all the experts have said, start reading to them. You may not think they're listening or learning, but they really are, and it's soothing. And then as they grow, my son is going to be 11 in a couple weeks, and he still loves to read before he goes to sleep. And it becomes a healthy habit for all of us. Mm-hmm. And I know for me that reading really has been helpful in times of my own stress. If I'm on an airplane, which I just do not like takeoff, once you're in the air and it's, quiet and go smooth sailing, I'm okay. But those first 10 minutes, I really find it helpful either to listen to music, of course, or to get immersed in a book that is a positive experience. So yes, that's the same concept before you go to bed, because to a young child, going to sleep, they fight it. They think it's the end of the world, right? They're being separated from their parents. They have to go away from whatever game or toy they're playing with or TV show they're watching. And so to make it that pleasant experience and a routine is so helpful. And of course, that's also what all the experts say about managing anxiety as well, is that calming your body down. And again, you can do that in a number of ways. You can add to your bedtime routine with your children some mindful deep breathing exercises, some yoga stretches, some gratitude prayers, things like that already we know are effective in reducing stress and anxiety. So you add that book to it, and that's where they kind of can doze off and go into sleepy land.
Yeah.
So it's
Well, I was going to say you talk a lot about the importance of helping our kids de-stress and deal with anxiety. And we hear that, and we know that stress isn't good, but I think a lot of times, sometimes people don't realize how not good stress is, especially when it comes to our kids. What are some of the consequences if we're not helping our kids deal with this anxiety and stress?
That is a great question. Well, I know from personal experience that it impacts your mood. So if you're feeling anxious, you may lash out. Anger can be what you see. Even though someone internally is feeling stressed or anxious, you may see it as anger, or you may see it as them acting aloof. They may not want to engage in conversation with their schoolwork. And of course, it also leads to physical health problems. Unfortunately, I've had plenty of them to go through. I've had dizziness, and kids complain of when a kid complains of a stomach ache, a lot of times it's because they're worried about something. So it's good to kind of nip it in the bud before it gets worse. And then, of course, if they're not, if they're anxious and they're not able to sleep well, if they're not getting to bed when they should, and they're waking up and they're having nightmares and all that, that also spins into a negative cycle where they can have physical health problems. They can just, you can't even tell, is it the sleep or is it the anxiety? They just kind of keep going, and it spins out of control. And then that's going to affect how they behave during the day, how they are able to get their schoolwork done in school. And not be able to sit through the class. They'll be tired and anxious at the same time, which is a horrible feeling because you want to rest, but you're so revved up. So it's so important. Again, all these kind of tricks and tools, natural tools that help our body get back to a balanced state.
Now, one thing we touched on a little bit in our conversation today is the whole idea of using these relaxation techniques, whether it's reading with our kids right before bed or going on a nature walk or doing some yoga outside. How valuable that is to as a first step before jumping into the medications, because medications are incredibly powerful. And I don't think a lot of them have been truly thoroughly tested on kids. And can you talk a little bit more about that and just how beneficial it can be to kind of deal with stress naturally without turning to medications?
Yes. Well, I do want to caveat my answer with saying that I am not a psychologist, a trained doctor. And that, I have set out this goal to educate parents, to teach them about how to manage stress and anxiety, but also to understand that there comes a time when you need to reach out for that professional help.
Yep.
And there is no shame in the medication when necessary. Now, I will say that with my own struggles with anxiety, you kind of want that crutch, like, oh, give me the medication, because it seems like it's going to solve your problem immediately. And from my experience, I've been told from experts, no, it's really a lot of hard work, and you can do it. And it is true, and it's so much every day finding these tools that will bring back that balance, being self-aware. And that's the tough part with children, is that it takes a long time for us to train ourselves to say, oh, I'm starting to feel that, ache in my neck, or my stomach feels a little icky, or, oh, that's because I'm worried or upset about something. And so one of the biggest lessons, and I keep hearing over and over, whether it's about technology, whether it's about these terrible school shootings, everything going on in the world, is that what's missing now with children is not an inability, but we're not really teaching them how to connect with their emotions. That it's okay to be upset and angry. Just express it in a healthy way and then address it, and that way you don't boil over. So that's really what it comes down to. And I think what happens is adults get to a point where they're so spun out of control, so anxious, that the only way to get out of that, to see an immediate effect would be medication. So we want to try to be educated enough as parents to kind of get the warning signs earlier now and say, okay, well, I know you're freaking out about your test. Let's go for a walk and see if that calms you down. Let's listen to some music. Let's have you read for 20 minutes instead of jumping to, oh my gosh, you're going to need your medication. So it's a lot of balance. Balance is really the key word in all of this.
Yeah, I think so. I think, and it's that whole idea of talking to kids about their emotions. There's some kids. I mean, one of a real turning point for my son was just when he and I kind of sat down, and he was experiencing so much anger, and it's like everything. Whatever. And we just kind of sat down, and we were able to figure out that he was turning a lot of his feelings of sadness, a lot of his feelings of disappointment. He wasn't experiencing those feelings as sadness, as disappointment. They were being turned into anger, like automatically. And so it was really, really helpful to kind of talk about that and to help him come to terms with that, and to this is sad. Okay, I don't like this, but I don't have to get angry about it.
And you know what? A wonderful, again, science-backed solution is journaling. Some of the most effective ways to deal with emotions would be any kind of creative arts, actually. Whether a young child, it might be, well, draw a picture about how you feel. Put together a little picture book. or journaling is so important, especially when it comes to anger, because it's really a great way to, people always feel better when they get it out. You know, like they say, don't send that email to your boss or your husband that you're so angry with right now. You draft it out, read it again in the morning, and then edit it before you send it, because it really does help you to manage your emotions when you write. And so again, maybe it would be helpful too for some children to read certain books about maybe a character that's learning how to deal with their anger. That's so many wonderful books out there. And as you were telling your story, I was thinking about Inside Out, which I think is one of the most amazing movies that describes and presents all of how we can balance and manage our emotions. And have you seen that movie?
I haven't, no.
Yeah, it's really fabulous because it explains that we do need, in order to feel joy, you need sadness. And in order to understand fear, you need to manage your joy and all your emotions. And it's really a fabulous, I'm sure there's books too they've created from that movie, but it really is so helpful. And I recommend it for everybody out there.
Yeah. Well, one of the things I'm going to recommend for everybody out there is to absolutely check out the happysciencemom.com blog, because it is just chock full of really great information. Can you talk a little bit about everything that we can find at happysciencemom.com?
Sure. So I cover a whole variety of natural stress reduction. I call it a toolkit for finding happiness and balance for your children. And some of the topics are creativity, food, exercise, setting goals is very important too. Some interesting articles about that. Mindfulness, optimism, emotional intelligence, just some simple fun and laughter, and all the science-backed information about that. Gratitude, spending time in nature, sleep, and kindness also. I spend a lot about how giving back to the community helps us feel better, helps reduce stress, helps us just live happier lives. I had actually taken a class out of Berkeley called The Science of Happiness. So that really informed my blog and how I set it up, because I really felt that these were the best tools that we could pass along to our children. And trust me, when you're reading them and learning about them, they help you, adults as well on a daily basis.
Yeah.
So I, of course, yeah.
One of the things I love is that it's science-based. This isn't just Sandy saying, well, I think this is kind of cool. There's like research that backs all this up. Yes.
Sometimes what's happened is I've seen the research and then I've written about it, and other times I've gone out and I said, well, how does climate change affect our mood, or different issues going on in the news, and then I go and see what's out there. And science, I was trained at the National Academy of Sciences. I worked with a lot of PhD scientists where you need to back up your claims. So that's, I was in DC for a while. So yeah, I'm bringing that to the world of parenting blogging, so that people can read and understand where it's coming from. And I have to say, I'm coming up on 4 years in the fall, and I really haven't had too many negative comments. On blogs, you're putting yourself out there for people to question what you're writing. And most of the time people are really very positive about what they read because it's backed up by science. I link to the science. This is studies. I'm not making it up. So, and it's fascinating. And it's fascinating to see how the science continues to change or get updated. One example is there's tons now being written in the media about this new study that came out recently that spending 20 minutes outside in nature makes reduces your stress hormones. And so this has really just been fascinating that you can, so much from that fact alone can be, you can look at it from, let's go on vacations outdoors. Let's go to the beach. Let's take our kids to the park more. Let's get a family bike ride going. So you can really spin it off in so many directions. And it's not just, I present this as resources, but also some simple things you can do every day as a parent with your kids and enjoy it while you're doing it.
Yeah, absolutely. As you were talking about negative comments, I remember talking to a group of kids at a religious school and telling them how, gratitude, when we're kind to someone, we do nice things for people. It's wonderful for them, but it's also great for us. It makes us feel better. And one of the teachers told me that I was wrong and that we should just do this because God wants us to do it. And I go, well, if that's right, God probably wants us to do it because it'll make us feel better. But anyway.
It's fun. No matter what, it's fun to see how the science shows the change and the positivity. It really is just fascinating.
Exactly. Yes. Well, I love it. Well, before we go, since we've talked about the value of reading with our kids before bedtime and how that helps them deal with stress and de-stress and helps them prevent getting into being anxious and whatnot, do you have any favorite books that you would suggest folks check out to read to their kids at bedtime?
Yes. Well, I did want to outline a few of the types of books to read.
Sure.
Because that's important. You want to keep it light and positive and interesting without being overly exciting either. And we also want to be mindful that this is a time for relaxation and not education. So although children might learn something in the process, that we really want to keep those school books away from this precious 20 minutes of reading before bedtime. But some of the tips I have is to look for whimsical imagery, especially the young children, to have books with really colorful illustrations so that when they close their eyes and that head hits the pillow at the end of the night, they have these positive, colorful images swirling around in their mind. And they can have wonderful dreams because of that visualization. Some tips for that would be Alice in Wonderland. It's very whimsical. I'm reading a really fun book with my kids, The Phantom Toll Booth by Norton Joester right now. And it's kind of very similar to Alice in Wonderland, but it's a lot of play on words. Very, very clever book. And then I also would recommend books about gratitude because, of course, all the science says if you do when you're thankful, you also have a reduction in stress. So there's so many wonderful books about gratitude, including Todd Parr's The Thankful Book, of course. And then the other thing I forgot to mention is on my blog, I have some book reviews as well that I've done over the years. And one of them was from a very wonderful author, Diana Smith, called My Grateful Book. And it's beautifully illustrated, a little whimsical in the language. And again, it's all about expressing gratitude. Books about helping others, as we mentioned, are, of course, wonderful. Like Bernstein Bears has a bunch of them, like Joy of Giving. I would recommend. These are all positive messages you're giving to your kids as they're calming down. And then finally, nature poetry, which, of course, as I mentioned, nature is kind of where I'm focusing a lot of my energy these days. And nature poetry is so wonderful because of the picture it presents of the beauty of nature. We also know that feeling awe, when you see a rainbow, when you see a beautiful mountain, when you see the ocean, you get that sense of awe that is almost indescribable. And so if we can bring that to our children through words, that is really, really a special way to help them relax. Some of the most famous nature poets include Robert Frost, Alfred Lord Tennyson, William Wordsmith, P.B. Shelley, and John Keats. And then I also have several that I found from my local library. National Geographic's Book of Nature Poetry has more than 200 poems with photographs, and it's a collection of some of the most famous nature poetry out there, which is really fun to go through.
Wow.
Yeah.
Now, as you were talking about being in awe of nature, I had this flashback to that video that went viral of the gentleman looking out at the double rainbow. Man, there's a double rainbow. I don't know if you remember that, but it was pretty. It went all around the world. Do you have any examples of a favorite poem that you like to read to your kids about nature?
Here's a poem by Emily Dickinson, and this is, again, in the National Geographic Book of Nature Poetry. You can get it at your local library or, of course, bookstore, or on Amazon. Nature is what we see, by Emily Dickinson. Nature is what we see, the hill, the afternoon, squirrel, eclipse, the bumblebee. Nay, nature is heaven. Nature is what we hear, the bobolink, the sea, thunder, the cricket. Nay, nature is harmony. Nature is what we know, yet have no art to say. So impotent our wisdom is to her simplicity.
Very cool. Very cool.
Yeah.
Well, we want everybody to check out the happysciencemom.com. And that's the best place to go to connect with you and to find out all that great information?
Yes, and you can also find me on Facebook and Twitter and Instagram at Happy Science Mom.
Awesome. Well, we've been talking to the Happy Science Mom and the driving force behind happysciencemom.com, Sandi Schwartz. Sandi, thanks so much for being on the show today.
Thanks for having me, and I encourage everyone especially to come and check out all the book reviews.
Please be sure to join us for the next edition of the Reading with Your Kids podcast. Our guest will be May Spencer. She is the author of Spinny the Spider. Hey, we want to thank our wonderful sponsors today. Laurie Wright, check out her book, I Can Handle It. We also want to thank Stephen Joseph for sponsoring us in creating the last surviving dinosaur, the Tyrannosaurus. I want to thank my amazing producer, Fatima Khan. And I want to thank my beautiful wife for all the support she gives me. And I want to thank you. Thank you so much for being such a wonderful part of our Reading with Your Kids family. Thank you so much for subscribing to the show on the iHeartRadio app, on Podbean, on Spotify, or wherever you find your podcasts. And most of all, thank you so much for helping to make the world a better place by reading with your kids. I'll be looking for you in the next edition of the Reading with Your Kids podcast.